Aw, boo-hoo. You didn't get your forward guidance from your central bankers? Aw, poor buggers. Come on. Hey, Canada. It's ridiculous. CBC News article under the business section. Listen to this headline. Holy shit, so pathetic. Bank of Canada defends itself for staying silent before interest rate hike. Ooh, like I said, these crony corporatist fucks, these central planning dipshits that rely on sucking off the teat of these central planners, this central bank and their central planning overlords, the political / ruling class. They are like, oh, you didn't give us forward guidance. You didn't tell us what was going to happen so we could prepare accordingly. What the hell? Look at how weak the people, look at what government has done to the business world. They've even turned what really should be the leaders in our country, like especially as far as economics goes, these should be the leaders of not just local communities and provinces, but of the entire country. These business leaders, they should not have to fucking think 1 minute about what some central planning government hack or one central banker decides that they're going to do with the economy. But that goes to show you once again, look at how much power has been placed in the hands of these central planning bureaucrats and this central bank institution that is just, once again, it's just legalized counterfeiting. When you're talking about central banks, you might as well say that word counterfeiting, you might as well have taken that and wiped it out of the fucking dictionary completely, because they've somehow made it so legalized and so legitimized that I guess, well, unless you did it, if you just printed money, if you printed Canadian dollars in your basement, right? Well, you would be a counterfeiter. But give someone a moniker of being a central banker, right? Give them some sense of legitimacy, and all of a sudden, hey, I can do that. But this is hilarious. The fact that the business community are having to even worry about what some central planning dipshit like Polaws does. It tells you, and it's like, well, we're part of the government too, right? It just goes to show you how cozy that relationship has become between big business and corporations and government. It's like they've come together to the point now where they're so intertwined. That's really what we're talking about. And that's what these collective endeavors have always happened, where all these countries around the world, where you see they become failed states, it's because politics and economics has joined together. And politics is as much of a failure as you could possibly hope for. They're the most inept, most parasitical, unthinking, oppressive, authoritarian fucks on the planet. But once you create that, which we have in spades in Canada, and then you merge that with the business community and the corporate class, well then, like I say, just like with every country around the world, well, that has ever happened. Well, that race to the bottom gets ramped up, and it's on a level that, yeah, you better have some fucking heavy-duty brakes to even try to impede the destruction of the real economy, right? The economy that matters most to you and I, the average person, the average citizen in this country. Economist says central bank's silent summer created a great deal of uncertainty for markets. Well, there you go. Well, that just should be that. To me, that's just more evidence that, well, you fuckers that are participating in the market are too much reliant on what some central planner or some central banker does, right? That's, if you're a business leader with any fucking courage or conviction at all, that's what you would be pointing out. But I recognize that this is being put forward and presented by CBC News. Oh, it's the Canadian press, of course. That's who's reporting this. But think about the kind of people, like I say, these are, even though they like to say that they're not part of the government, in Canada, in reality, a lot of these major corporations, or I would say almost every one of these major corporations, they have this kind of, arm's length relationship, so they can say, hey, we're not part of government. But like I say, not only is it an arm's length, but they got their arm stretched out and holding the hands of government. Or actually, maybe it's the government that are holding their hands. Well, I don't know. Either way, right? Same shit, different pile. But yeah, they're literally pointing out how inept they are without the central planning overlords telling them how to, hey, we're going to manipulate the economy and we'll give you a heads up on how we're going to do it so you can better affect how you're going to do business going forward. Oh, man. These corporations, and like I say, it's that race to the bottom where everyone's like, well, if I don't participate, I get left out in the cold, or I don't get to participate at all. Well, yeah, well, if you want to choose to participate in it, I guess, right? I'm sure you give yourself plenty of excuses on a daily basis of why you should continue to actively participate in this shit. And it's probably because you have made it so that you at least benefit in some way, right? Because you wouldn't do it if you weren't. Your subordinates, your employees, you know, those especially on the lower end of the pay or wage scale in your place, they're having to suffer all the time. But you're like, it's benefiting me. So, it's just more proof once again that people really, at the end of the day, people ultimately, they can talk about altruism as much as they want, but most people care about themselves. First and foremost, most people, with very, very, very few rare exceptions, they care about themselves first and foremost. Recognize that, whether you're in the private sector, public sector, or anywhere in between, everyone ultimately is going to be worrying about themselves and their own. And anyone that pretends otherwise, like I say, well, they're probably trying to sell you something, whether it's an ideology or a product or a service. Ultimately, they're wanting themselves to benefit the most from that endeavor. The Bank of Canada is defending itself amid questions about its public silence ahead of an interest rate increase last week that caught many analysts by surprise. The response came after BMO chief economist Doug Porter took issue with the central bank's lack of public remarks in the 8 weeks before the rate increase. He didn't give us forward guidance. Wah. In a note to clients, Porter said he had no problem with the rate increase itself because the stronger economy had made a solid case for it, right? Banks benefit from increased rate hikes, right? Think about it. You're a bank. Where do you make your money from? Interest rates. So, it's not like they care about interest rates. They actually want interest rates higher because they benefit from it. Actually, lower or higher, they always benefit from it because they will offload any additional costs onto the end consumer, onto the borrower. And if they don't make it up in the mortgage rates, they'll make it up in credit cards rates or these HELOCs or look at all the service charges they charge. They will find a way. Banks won't lose. They never lose. Especially when you got governments bailing them out, even when they do lose. But he blamed the information vacuum for causing a great deal of uncertainty and a fairly violent market reaction. Oh, like I said, think about before you had all this kind of big data and central planning, central banking kind of forward guidance. I wonder how businesses would have adapted and even existed and flourished back in the day before all this shit happened, huh? But it did, right? As a matter of fact, they were much better at doing things prior to now than they are in this modern era. Like I say, the business community today, like I say, they just look like a bunch of fucking little piglets suckling on the big, gigantic government tit constantly. And they're like, please, Mr. Government, please. Or Mrs. Government, right? Please. That's what the business community, not all, mind you, but that's what these large mega corporations have turned into now. Just a bunch of inept business leaders that wear very expensive suits that really are very inept at what they do without some central planning hack telling them how they should do it. You wonder why, like I say, why all these collectivist economic systems always fail. Well, that race to the bottom, you got a bunch of bottom feeders running things. Probably doesn't work out very well under that scenario, under that situation, right? Canadians hadn't heard a peep from the central bank since it raised the rate July 12th for the first time in nearly 7 years, Porter wrote in Friday's note. And that's another thing. And when they finally did, they went, from half of a percentage point to 3/4 of a percentage point. So 25 basis points, 0.25%. The markets are all like, although they calmed down quickly because it's all about fucking bullshit propaganda and these false fucking sensationalized articles and narratives. Like, come on, man. Like I say, if you want the economy to get better, if you want Canadians, these business leaders to get better, and even your fucking government overlords, Start holding them to account. Stop fucking coddling them constantly. Stop giving them the ability to fucking keep correcting over their mistakes constantly without actually learning from them, right? If you can just keep painting over your mistakes without actually learning, what caused you to make that mistake in the first place, well, chances are you're probably going to make the same kind of mistake or a mistake a little bit different, but it's still going to be a mistake going forward. Once again, holy shit. Ahead of the July increase, senior officials, including Governor Stephen Pola, sent clear signals the bank had shifted to a rate hiking path. However, for nearly 2 months before last week's announcements, the bank went dark. So, like I said, it's telling me these fuckers are so inept they don't even know how to function in the business environment. Really? That should be enough. If a business leader came to anyone and said this, right? Or let's say if you were a CEO of a company and some mid-management came to you and said this, oh, well, I didn't know. Somebody wasn't giving me forward guidance. You'd be like, well, you're probably not the right guy for the job. Maybe you should be down there in the mailroom doing some sorting. Or, do you think you could handle that one? That might be a little bit too much for you still. Maybe you should just go out and collect garbage on the side of the street. You could do that, right? That's, like I say, that's the culmination of what these major corporations have turned into now. Just a bunch of fucking inept morons. And I wouldn't even call them business leaders, because a leader, they lead, right? This is telling you that they don't lead, they follow. They follow the actions and the words of central planners. So business leaders, no, you can't even really give them that kind of moniker, because they're showing that they have no ability or no skills to lead anything. Definitely not their business, and definitely not the economy. Skinny Libertarian, and I love liberty.